Look around you. We live in the age of information overload, constant notifications, and a culture that rewards being busy over being clear. Most people wake up already behind. The alarm goes off. The phone appears in their hand before their eyes have fully opened, and within 3 minutes they are scrolling through other people's opinions, anxieties, and highlight reels. By the time they pour their first cup of coffee, their mind is already cluttered with noise that has nothing to do with their actual life. And they carry that noise, that low-grade static, through every hour of the day. The meetings feel foggy. The decisions feel heavy. The afternoon arrives and they cannot remember what they actually did in the morning, only that it felt exhausting. What if I told you that the fog most people call normal is not a feature of modern life? What if the heaviness you feel by midday is not inevitable? It is the result of a few very specific choices made in the first 40 minutes after you wake up. In Japan, particularly among older generations in cities like Kyoto and Kanazawa, researchers studying longevity and cognitive health have noticed something unusual. People well into their 70s and 80s report mental clarity, focused attention, and emotional steadiness that their Western counterparts in the same age group rarely experience. Dr. Port Masahiro Kamada, a cognitive wellness researcher at Kyoto University, noted in a 2019 study on urban aging that Japanese adults in high-clarity groups shared remarkably consistent morning behaviors, not supplements, not expensive routines, not anything that required money or exceptional discipline, just habits. Ordinary habits performed with uncommon intentionality. Their secret is not genetic, it is not financial. It is the understanding that the morning is not the beginning of your day. It is the architecture of your mind for everything that follows. In this video, I am going to walk you through 7 of these habits. Each one is simple. Each one is actionable today, but I want you to stay until the 7th habit, because that one is the habit almost nobody in the West talks about. And it may be the reason all the other habits you have tried before never fully stuck. The first habit is called Mezame no Shizen, which translates roughly as the natural awakening. What an outside observer notices about people who practice this is that they do not reach for their phone first. They do not check messages, news, or notifications for at least the first 20 minutes of the day. Instead, they open a window or step outside briefly or simply sit in natural light and let their eyes and nervous system adjust to the world at their own pace. It looks almost passive, but what is happening beneath the surface is anything but passive. You probably know the internal conflict here. The pull to check your phone is immediate and powerful. Something inside you says, I need to know what happened while I was asleep. I might be missing something important. That feeling is real, but neuroscientist Andrew Huberman at Stanford has documented extensively that the first exposure to light and the first sensory inputs of the morning calibrate your cortisol and dopamine systems for the entire day. When your first input is a social media feed or a news headline, your nervous system registers mild threat and social comparison before it has fully booted up. You spend the rest of the day running a threat detection program you never consciously chose to install. Over 1 year, the person who protects their first 20 minutes accumulates roughly 120 hours of undistorted morning cognition. The person who doesn't accumulates 120 hours of early morning cortisol spikes. The difference shows in focus, creativity, and emotional resilience in ways that are measurable by October if you start in January. The instruction is simple. Place your phone across the room before you sleep tonight. Let your first 20 minutes belong to your own nervous system. But there is something even more fundamental than where you put your phone. The second habit is Mizu no Rei, the morning water ritual. People who practice this drink 1 full glass of water slowly before any caffeine. They do not gulp it, they sit with it. They treat it as the first intentional act of the day, not a chore squeezed between other things. To an outside observer, it looks like someone simply drinking water. What it actually is a physiological reset and a signal to the brain that the body is being tended to. After 6 to 8 hours of sleep, the brain is mildly dehydrated, and mild dehydration as little as 1 to 2%, documented by Dr. Lawrence Armstrong at the University of Connecticut, measurably impairs working memory, attention, and processing speed. The conflict is that most people are already mentally halfway out the door. The idea of sitting quietly with a glass of water feels slow when your mind is already at work. But that slowness is precisely the medicine. Over a year, the person who begins every day with this small act of self-tending develops a different relationship with their own body. They become more attuned to physical signals throughout the day, hunger, tension, fatigue, and more responsive to them before they escalate into fog. Your instruction: drink water before coffee. Sit while you do it. Even 3 minutes is enough. But there is something even more fundamental than what you drink. The third habit is siri, which means to put in order. Japanese mornings often begin with a brief and deliberate act of physical organization. Making the bed, folding what was left out the night before, clearing the surface where the day will begin. It is not cleaning in the deep sense. It is a 2 to 3 minute restoration of visual order. What the outside observer notices in people with this habit is that their environment tends to stay calmer throughout the day. Things return to their place. Disorder does not accumulate, and their mind, researchers in environmental psychology now confirm, reflects this order. The University of Minnesota's Kathleen Vose published research showing that disorganized environments increase cognitive load, the invisible mental effort of processing visual noise, and reduce the capacity for clear decision-making. The conflict is that when you are tired and foggy in the morning, creating order feels like effort. What most people do not realize is that the fog itself is partially produced by the disorder. The cause and the effect are reversed in most people's minds. 1 year of daily siri does not just produce a tidier home. It produces a mind that is less easily overwhelmed by complexity. Your instruction before you leave the room where you slept: spend 2 minutes returning it to order. That is the whole habit. But there is something even more fundamental than your environment. The fourth habit is called shizukesa, stillness, not meditation in the elaborate sense, not breath work with an app, simply sitting in silence without input for 5 to 10 minutes. People who practice this are often observed by others as unusually calm under pressure. They do not seem reactive. Difficult news lands on them differently. Japanese philosopher Daisaku Ikeda wrote that silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of the self. When you sit in silence each morning, you become briefly acquainted with your own mind before the world fills it with its agenda. Neuroscience now supports what contemplative traditions have known for centuries. Default mode network activity during quiet rest consolidates memory, processes emotion, and produces the kind of background insight that most people call intuition. Your instruction: after your water, before any screen, sit in a comfortable chair or on the floor for 5 minutes with no input. You do not need to meditate. You only need to be still. But there is something even more fundamental than stillness. The fifth habit is tennei shokuji, the careful meal. Japanese mornings often include a small, real meal eaten sitting down, without a screen, with attention on the food itself. It does not need to be elaborate. What it needs to be is intentional. Eating while standing, while scrolling, or while walking sends the nervous system a signal that the body is in a mild state of urgency, and the digestive and cognitive systems respond accordingly. Dr. Scheidt, Brian Wansink at Cornell studied the relationship between eating attention and satiety, finding that people who eat without awareness consistently report lower energy and higher irritability in the hours that follow, independent of what they actually ate. The person who eats one small meal with full attention will feel more cognitively stable at noon than the person who ate twice as much while distracted. Your instruction: sit down for your morning meal. Put nothing in your hands except your food. 5 minutes of attention is enough to change the biochemical environment of your morning, but there is something even more fundamental than what you eat. The sixth habit is karada no mizaime, the awakening of the body. Brief physical movement in the morning, not exercise in the aggressive sense, but a deliberate activation of the body. 5 to 10 minutes of stretching, slow walking, or gentle movement that brings awareness into the limbs and spine. People with this habit carry themselves differently. Their posture is more open, their breath is fuller. Exercise physiologist Dr. John Ratey at Harvard Medical School has documented the relationship between morning movement and the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a protein that improves learning, memory, and mood regulation for hours after even brief physical activity. The conflict is that 10 minutes of stretching feels trivial compared to a real workout. But the goal here is not fitness. It is neurological activation. You are waking the brain up through the body. Your instruction, after stillness, move your body for 10 minutes. No equipment, no plan, just movement with attention. And now we arrive at the 7th habit, the one that makes all the others possible. It is called Ichi Nichi Ichizen, one day, one good thing. Before the day begins, before the world makes its demands, the person writes down or speaks aloud one specific thing they intend to do well today. Not a to-do list, not goals. One thing, a specific act of quality. It might be listening fully in one conversation. It might be finishing one piece of work without interruption. It might be preparing a meal with care. This habit does not organize the day. It orients the mind. And orientation is what every other habit on this list has been quietly building toward. A mind that is rested, hydrated, ordered, still, nourished, and activated is capable of extraordinary focus, but only if it has somewhere to point. Without Ichi Nichi Ichizen, the morning becomes a collection of pleasant rituals that dissolve by 9 o'clock. With it, the habits become the preparation for something that matters. Over 1 year, the person who begins each day with one clear intention does not just feel less foggy. They feel less lost. There is a difference between those two things that is difficult to describe and impossible to miss once you feel it. Mental fog is not tiredness. It is the experience of a mind that has been given no direction, flooded with input before it was ready, and asked to perform without being prepared. These 7 habits do not demand perfection. They ask only for sequence and intention. Which of these have you already lost somewhere along the way? And which one will you reclaim first? Leave your answer below. I read every one.